It's time to make some nightmare fuel, guys. In the previous video, I had already worked out the scale. Die-hard FNAF fans will know that Nightmare Fredbear's design is unbalanced in proportion and quite frankly unhinged. It features teeth with red stains ripping out of its chest. And if that wasn't creepy enough, I'm gonna make them chomp. Now this isn't accurate of course to the game, but you have to agree, it makes it a whole lot creepier. So now that I've decided I'm gonna make Nightmare Fredbear even more nightmarish, it's time to make the chest. I started making the chest the same way I made the legs and the foam feet. So if you haven't seen the part where I made the legs and you want to see it, check out the other video and come back to see how I made this even worse. To make the teeth move and retract, I'm going to need to use electronics. As I only used servos in the past for mechanical movement, I spent a decent amount of time over-engineering a design. Because remember guys, I'm not an engineer. But that did remind me of who is. James Breton. For those of you who are not familiar with James's work, he makes incredible things that literally blow my mind. So when I showed him my unnecessarily overcomplicated design, he simply suggested using their reciprocating mechanism, a term I had never heard of, but after some very quick research, I began. I designed 2 versions of this mechanism in Fusion 360. Before I can test either of these mechanisms, I actually need to give the motors a brain, which I did by writing 6 simple lines of code in Arduino IDE. Now with the mechanism, the motor, the power, and the electronics, it should start moving. There is one problem with this mechanic though, let me show you. Now, I want you to pretend this is my finger, which I did off camera by accident. And that really hurt. So I'm not gonna go with that design, but luckily I have a second design that I'm gonna try. Now, it's a little bit louder, but it's a lot more elegant in design, and when you do this, there's no big risk of it getting caught. So that design is superior in almost every single way. So you're probably looking at this and thinking, cool, but what has that got to do with chomping teeth? So I'm hoping it's gonna make more sense if I just stick this on. In theory, it works, and now it's time to go back to Fusion 360 to make the final design. So now that the chest and mech are ready for colour, it's time to start on the arms and hands with EVA foam. This was the easiest part. Now with this inspired look bracer thing, I'm going to put it in here so that when I have my arm in this, as you can see, it's like on my arm, but it's like levitating for everything else. For the hands, I decided to use 3D modeling and printing just because it's more reliable for the joints, which is really important around here and here. And you're probably thinking, how do you even begin with that? Thankfully, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare has many helpful classes where you can learn lots of different 3D modeling softwares, such as Blender and Fusion 360, which you've seen me using to make mechanical parts. Speaking of which, Jeffrey Wolf has a great masterclass that can help you become comfortable with 3D modeling in Fusion 360. Now, I used to hate 3D modeling. However, with such amazing classes on Skillshare, I've even started learning a 3rd modeling software, Nomad Sculpt, where a fantastic creator by the name of Dave Reed taught me how to model this cute little guy. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of creative classes in many categories, not just 3D modeling, such as sewing, all the way to photography and design. I've really enjoyed learning on Skillshare because I used to get this really overwhelming feeling before when I first start learning something new that's creative, so I've really enjoyed how easy Skillshare has made the learning process. Once again, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today and join the Skillshare community. After modelling the parts, I began 3D printing. After 5 days of printing, I began assembling the pieces to test them. I've never made a hand this big, so it definitely tests the theory. The hands are a massive challenge because they are so huge. All of my previous versions of these hands from Foxy and Chica have featured a much smaller in size, which means you don't have issues with weight and you don't have issues with strength. It's all quite simple. As you can see by Fredbear's hand, it's already 3 times bigger at least than Chica's. However, I'm going to worry about that later. So if you look at these things, this is the little bits I was showing you on the 3D model. They have two cables, one that pulls it, oh my gosh, it almost hit me, and the other one that pulls it this way. So it's like one up, one down. Did I tell you I'm not an engineer? This is the elastic that needs to pull it back to its reset position, and this one is being pulled with my finger. Note is that it is held together with this tiny piece of wire, and that just lets it swivel on a pivot. I always like to have it so you can access these hands at any time, because with these things, I mean, they're always a work in progress for me. Due to the size of the hand, which is enormous, I realized this is actually not the best method for it. It's our whole theory where if you were to hold this close to you, for example, it doesn't feel that heavy, but if you were to hold it like this, it suddenly feels so much heavier. My hand is doing that exact same thing. In hindsight, I would actually use gears now for the joints rather than the whole thing I just explained to you, but I just wanted to show you because it does work when it's something much smaller. But because I want this video out this month, we don't have time to change it in any way, so it's time to move on to covering all of this in paint and fabric. I started sanding and painting all of the 3D parts first before moving on to sewing and gluing the fabrics. Before weathering the fabrics, I added those unique imprint lines using my very hot tool. As you can see, some new upgrades have been added to my plug suit. The things I've added are just kind of a loose reference to what's actually accurate in the design. Finally, I added the last few details and finished assembling the hand one last time. Okay, so I've just updated the code. So before, it was just going on a continuous loop of just at full speed. But I really wanted to just like ramp it up, like its speed, so it starts off slow and then gets a bit faster. So now I'm gonna test that on the final version. It's now slowing down. It stops. And then it starts again. So, now with that finished, it's time to put all the pieces on. That actually worked. I'm so happy with it so far, which means, guys, that we only have the head left to do. I am so busy next month. I'm traveling in a bit, so I think I'm gonna have to do that in two parts. One where I finally do the animatronic eye video that you guys have been asking many times in the comments. So I will build his eyes and some other eyes just to show you how I've done it in the past, and hopefully that will help you. And then the final video, which will probably be in March, will be the entire thing. So yeah, Hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!